Late Night Health continues. I'm Mark Allen. This is Hour 2. A few months ago, I was at a convention, a double convention, a Global Influence Network and the EBC. And I met a young lady, and we just hit it off and spent pretty much all the weekend together when we weren't in seminars and things like that. We had dinner, we talked, we walked, and we talked some more. Her name is Liberty Forrest. She is calling us today from Canada, and we're going to talk today about self-healing. Liberty, welcome to Late Night Health.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
And by the way, on our Facebook page, I posted over the weekend Liberty's debut song. She's a songwriter and singer, and I posted.
Oh, you did? You posted it? Oh dear.
Yes, I did. I even put a Twitter link on it too. The song is called "Step Into My Dreams," and it's got a kind of a folky tune to me, sound to me, and I love it. But the words are really, really important. So I think everybody should listen to that, because by stepping into your dreams have a better chance of coming true. How did you get into self-healing, Liberty?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the plug about the song. I appreciate that.
Sure.
The self-healing, well, I spent a lifetime being ill, quite ill. I grew up, as many people do, in a very toxic environment, and by the time I was about 8 or 9 years old, I was having significant panic attacks in the middle of the night. I didn't know that's what they were, but I was lying in my bed, shaking for ages, thought I was going to die. It was terrible. But that was just because there was so much fear and anxiety in every moment of my life. So I left home at 16 thinking, that's enough of this. I'm going to just leave all that behind me and, set out and have a great life.
Right.
It doesn't really work like that. But, I found myself just a few years after that. I was in my late teens. I was a divorced single parent for the first time. And I had several anxiety disorders. I was at the beginning of what would be an 9-year battle with anorexia. I had obsessive compulsive disorder. I was still having panic attacks. I developed agoraphobia, and then I developed an addiction to try to cope with all the anxiety. So I was a right mess.
Wow.
And by the time I hit sort of 20-ish, my physical health started to suffer. I later learned it was really because of all that anxiety. And so then my physical health got worse and worse over those years. And through my 20s, I did eventually manage to fix all the anxiety disorders. But the physical health became pretty critical. So eventually I was in my 30s, and I was a divorced single parent again, but this time with 5 children. And I was really ill with all sorts of problems, one of which...
Hold on, you went from one kid to 5?
Yeah, eventually. It wasn't quite that simple.
No, and it must have taken longer than just a few minutes. Well, maybe, maybe not.
Well, I'll bite my tongue on that one. But
all
anyway.
Right, got it.
But anyway, it was, and that's the other thing, right? With all that insanity in my childhood, I had a really chaotic life because of the beliefs that I had about myself and the world, and I kept getting into toxic relationships and, marriages and divorces and kids, and it was a phenomenal amount of stress with the kinds of things I was dealing with, and abusive relationships and all sorts of stupidity. Anyway, so I ended up in my 30s, and by then, of course, I was really on a mission to find healing through my 20s as well when it started, because I was so ill and I had these children to look after, and then I was in my 30s, and by then I'm having this very healthy diet. I was eating everything right, cramming tofu and seaweed and things like that down my kids' throats. They were so good, bless them. They ate it. And I was a non-smoker. I hardly ever drank. I had lots of exercise. I was underweight, did everything right. And then I started having heart attacks. And my doctor said, because he knew about my life, he just said it was really from the stress of the life that I lived. I've always sort of wondered whether the anorexia might have done a bit of damage to my heart as well. I don't know, but and he thought it was the stress. So I ended up becoming even more ill, and to the point where I became suicidal. And because I was suffering so much, and my kids got fed up, I think, wondering, or I thought they must be fed up, wondering which day they'd come home from school and find me dead. It was awful. It was years of suffering with this heart problem. And another long story made short, eventually I reached a point where I'd sort of run out of options. I wasn't going to go down I'd done enough of the conventional route, and I wasn't going there anymore.
Conventional health, you mean?
Yes, and I tried just about every alternative thing there was, and some of them were pretty over the top, but I was desperate. When you're desperate, you do desperate things.
Sure.
I tried everything. And then I reached a point where I was just so fed up with the suffering, but I knew I had a purpose in my life. I thank God got out of that suicidal point sometime before that, but I reached this point where I thought, you know what, I hear about people who cure themselves of cancer. I've heard about people who have terrible accidents and they're told they'll never walk again, they're quadriplegic or whatever, but they manage to beat all the odds and they get their health back. And I thought, I've got to be able to do this. Somehow I'm going to figure this out. I actually said it with some words I won't repeat right now. And I had some of a little temper tantrum, kind of stamped my foot, sitting here just angry and frustrated, and thought, I've got to figure this out. And then it was the weirdest thing. All of a sudden, I was getting these bits and pieces of information that were kind of popping out at me, or I'd turn on the TV to something, a show I'd never watched, and then there'd just be a snippet of information that seemed relevant. And I started keeping track of all these pieces of information and was experimenting with what I was learning. One of the biggest things was reconnecting with myself, really, and my body, because I was hating it. I was sending it hate mail. I was constantly angry with my body for letting me down, for not functioning properly. And when I really connected with it again and understood, well, why would it like me? How could I expect that was going to heal it if I'm sending it these angry messages all the time? That was the first thing I kind of changed. But it was a period of several months of experimentation, and suddenly I started to get better, and I was keeping track of my progress because I thought, well, am I just hallucinating?
Can anybody do this? We're going to run out of time. Can anybody learn how to do this? It's funny. I like to watch a lot of old movies, and every now and then watching these old movies, there'll be a line in there that resonates with me, and it says, get up off your tush and do this, whatever it might be. Be happy, be healthy, be wise, be rich, whatever the messages from that movie or TV show, that it just somehow, that line or two resonates with me. I didn't know other people did that. And you're saying that you do. You find you're watching something and it means something to you.
Yeah. Well, and because I was experimenting and seeing results, and so I was just about to get to the point where I was going to say the thing I learned the most was about the connecting with the mind, and it was remembering. This was one of the key pieces, was remembering. Years ago, I'd heard that somebody with multiple personality disorder had one of the personalities that was insulin-dependent diabetic, but all the other personalities could have all the sugar they wanted if they were the ones in control. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I looked this up, and I actually discovered that there were numerous cases of this around the world where people with this disorder have their personalities can have completely different health profiles, and you might have one that's anaphylactic with nuts, but all the other ones can eat all the nuts they want and they won't die.
Wow.
And it's even weirder than that, because there are all these documented cases where people have that disorder, and they've got, among their personalities, they've got burns and scars and tumors that will disappear and reappear depending on which personality's in control.
So that just goes to show that the power of the mind is the power of the mind.
Exactly, and that's where I was headed, to say that, and I certainly, when I was doing this project, there's a lot of other stuff that has to happen too, physically, emotionally, environmentally. You can't be living a toxic life in other ways, but certainly that was, if I had to just pick one thing, it would be about the power of the mind. And as a hypnotist, I've seen some astonishing things in people as well, with what you can make them believe, about like pain relief and get them hypnotized, and it removes their pain and this sort of thing. It's just, the mind is astonishing, and that was a massively key piece to my own healing. And I've never been as well as I have since then. You
do hypnotherapy as well, or have?
I have done, yes.
Not
currently.
Not currently. Yeah. And one of the things that Liberty is an artist. She writes music, she sings, and she's an intuitive. So I think she's intuitively saying we need to take a break, and when we come back, we will continue our conversation. Am I right?
That sounds like a great plan.
Okay. By the way, you can find out more about Liberty by going to latenighthealth.com. There'll be a picture of Liberty there, as well as a link to her website and her bio as well. All right. I'm Mark Allen. Daryl Wayne and I return as we move forward here on Late Night Health.